Hello, it's Rachel here from Mum and You with Sarah, who is going to tell us a quite frankly harrowing story on living with endometriosis. Sarah, could you just start with telling us what endometriosis is?
So endometriosis is where the lining, well, it's not the lining of the womb, it's similar to the lining of the womb. So it's tissue that's like that, grows in other places. It can grow on your ovaries, which it did for me. It can grow around the outside of the uterus. It can grow on the fallopian tubes. The pain is out of this world. It feels like the only way I can describe it is because it's random as well. It's like someone's got a white hot blade and is stabbing you in your lower abdomen, in your ovaries. It feels like sometimes someone is, I know this is really descriptive and it sounds awful, but there are times where I feel like someone is literally scraping. And it is that the black ball down and now scrape across my pelvic bone, and it's horrendous. The periods I've had, so I started my periods really early, which I still don't know if that's, a telltale sign or not. I don't know. However, I went to an all girls secondary school, and the lack of awareness around these types of conditions. So I'd be laid up, I'd be in sick bay. My periods were so excessive that I'd have to wear, I'd be constantly changing my pad, and had many an accident, which when you're in your pre-teens/teens is the most humiliating thing that can ever happen to you. And I was taken to the doctors a lot. And by the time I got to 14, 15, they just told me I had to go on the contraceptive pill to help control it, because that was the only thing that they could do to help resolve it, which is heartbreaking when you're that age, because there's connotations that come with that. Even now, I just feel like it's never ending. I get really bad nausea. And the amount of times I get asked by the doctors, even my GP, if I go in there with any symptoms, are you pregnant? And it's horrendous.
And how long would you say that you've had or you've known that you've had endometriosis or had a diagnosis of endometriosis?
So I don't know how long I've had it. Like I say, I've had symptoms ever since I was really young. I was diagnosed, so I actually, it was 12 years ago now. I had my first laparoscopy, and it was by chance. I was in so much pain that I collapsed, because the pain, I can't, unless you've had it, it's really hard to articulate, but it shoots, it's so heavy, it's so harsh. The pain literally takes out from your middle to your knees. It's like it will take, like your thighs, the pain is just nauseating. And my now husband, then we'd only been dating a little while, had to carry me out of a shop, because I was in that much pain and I couldn't walk, and I collapsed pretty much on him because my legs gave way because it got so serious. I got referred to A&E, and luckily for me, the gynecologist on call was absolutely phenomenal. And at the time where I was working, I had private healthcare, and my boss recommended to me to see if I could use my private healthcare, because to get the follow up was to have a scan and then to do some investigatory work and stuff. And luckily that it was covered by my private healthcare. I saw him in literally a week. And then he booked in a laparoscopy, and he said to me, he said, I think it's endometriosis based on your symptoms, based on your history. When he did my first laparoscopy and he lasered away what he could, he said that obviously that had been building up over an exceptional length of time. We then had quite a lengthy conversation around how to treat it moving forward. Since then, I've had another laparoscopy, again privately, because getting one done on the NHS is a very lengthy procedure. And most people just assume, because they've not seen it on a standard ultrasound, which as far as I'm aware, what I've been told by my gynecologist consultants, you can't pick up. Like I say, by no means am I an expert. I can only tell you my story. So a laparoscopy is the only way to truly confirm. And the one I had before my eldest son, my ovary was completely stuck to the wall of my uterus, so the lining had complete. It was awful. So that was all lasered away and it was cut away. So that was good, but it explained quite a lot why I was getting a lot of pain on that side.
What treatments have you had in the past for endometriosis, and what are you taking now to help support your symptoms?
I've had then, so since my laparoscopy, I've had Zoladex treatment, which is a very large needle that goes through and is it's a hormone that's injected into you, and it creates kind of it simulates like a menopause, so it stops everything, but there are obviously side effects to that, and they are quite daunting. I was then recommended to have the Marina coil, which is a whole conversation for a whole other day. But I know some people don't find it painful. For me, the whole insertion process of that was bordering barbaric. And even after, the pain after is awful. In terms of pain relief on a day-to-day basis, I have codeine and paracetamol. But because my husband works shifts and obviously I work full time and I've got two young children, I don't really like taking the codeine, sends me a bit woozy. So I try to avoid taking it unless it's an absolute necessity. And in fairness, over time, and it's a weird thing to say, you get used to the pain. You shouldn't have to, but you get used to the pain. And whilst it is agonising, pain that 10 years ago used to make me literally vomit now just makes me slightly nauseous. So I suppose there's a win. It gets better over time. It's still not right.
Could you tell us a bit more, or try and describe, if you can, what your pain is like? I think it's kind of hard to imagine as someone who doesn't have endometriosis, just and it being something you can't see, just what that pain is like. Are you in pain every single day? Like, how would you describe it?
Pain on a day-to-day basis is hard to ignore. For anyone that I have endometriosis and adenomyosis. So for me, there is some of that lining is now embedded into the womb, so it cannot be treated, so it cannot be lasered off. So I think there are a lot of gynecological conditions that I think actually are very similar or distant cousins of each other and are all linked, and it's probably a lot easier for people to say, oh, it's that, and just put it down to one thing. But I think there are some crossovers. Like I could say, I can only talk from my personal experience, but the pain on a daily basis is heartbreaking, it's agonizing, and I just pray that it doesn't pass down the maternal line, because I don't want my daughter to have it. And I look at her now and I pray that there's some answers before. I mean, I've been in the waiting room and spoken to other people that have experienced it or have had it, and that have had hysterectomies in the hope that it would alleviate their symptoms. And they're not even, these are people under the age of 30 and they're still experiencing pain. And the problem is, I think the key is there's so little known about it. And that is disgusting, really, considering where we are in the world. And us women still have to go through these procedures and this pain, and most of the time, in fairness, the amount of people that will go to the doctor and be dismissed because you're a woman, this is what it's a period, deal with it. And actually that's not always the case. And I know, I think it's more common than people think, but yeah, the only way I can describe it is having razor blades around my middle.
And as a company of mums, we support mums, and we know how hard it is to kind of juggle motherhood and work and everything. So how do you deal with the kind of overwhelmingness of motherhood anyway, whilst having endometriosis at the same time?
Being a mum, like I say, dealing with the pain anyway is bad enough. There are my side effects for me personally. I normally get really bad headaches and nausea, and I can't sleep. So all of these things have knock-on effects. And I've got a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I work full time. So I'm I try to stay focused as obviously as best I can. I try to keep it away from my children. I try to keep it away from work if I can. It is it's a lot easier to have to work in the environment we do and have understanding employers. However, I know that's not always the case. And even just doing the school run when you're in pain, it's you know it's I know there are people out there with a lot worse symptoms than me, and I get that, but it's it's a killer because of some of the headache and the nausea, the lack of sleep naturally has a knock-on impact.
How would you describe the kind of day-to-day impact that endometriosis has on your life?
In terms of just day-to-day impact on abilities, so there are, like I say, because of some of the headache and the nausea, the lack of sleep naturally has a knock-on impact. My tummy is so swollen most of the time, and hard, and it hurts, and therefore anything with a waistband is kind of a no-go. And it impacts your self-confidence, it impacts how you feel, when you have literally got no energy and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're crying on the bathroom floor because you're in that much pain, and there's nothing that can be done, so it's not like it's going to end. As a mum, having a contraction, knowing that at the end of it I'm going to get my bubba, I would do that 100 times over. Because with this, there is no end. You don't know when it's going to end. You don't know how long it's going to last for. And again, it can come on suddenly, the pain. And like I say, trying to keep it away from the children, because I don't want to let them see me in pain. And it's awful. Yeah, I think it's just day to day. Activities are hard. You just feel uncomfortable, so you don't really enjoy anything. There's certain foods, certain times. There's sometimes, I mean, I love spicy food, but there are times when the nausea just overtakes, and all I can eat are really bland, plain foods, and it's really frustrating, especially if you've got plans or you've booked plans to go out, and impact date nights, holidays, everything gets impacted by how you're feeling, by what treatment you're on, if any, at that point, or pain relief. And there's just 100 things to think about on top of the 100 things we think about every day anyway. So the day-to-day impact on other people as well has, on the children, like things I can't do, or things that I would normally do that if it hits on a day where I'm experiencing a lot of pain, I can't do. Silly things like a date night with my husband will have to be particularly different because the restaurant we chose to go to, the food wouldn't sit right because I'm feeling particularly nauseous, or I'm feeling particularly bloated, or I'm just in so much pain that I don't want to go. So yeah, it has an impact. And obviously then the impact on my husband to pick up those pieces and stuff like that. The other thing that I worry about is driving. So if I live in literally the middle of nowhere, So I've to be driving the car and have shooting pain is scary. And again, to try and control that, and to know that those pains can come on at any point, is constantly on your mind. Yeah, it's just unpleasant. I think in every day, I think the fact that there's no end and there's no ultimate relief for anyone is awful.
What awareness do you think there is around endometriosis?
It's an invisible illness, so people don't class it as a, you know, as something that's. I read an article a little while ago, and someone said, "Oh, it's completely, it's a benign illness," and actually, it's not, because the toll it takes on you for the rest of your life, or for, and in some cases, like I say, even with hysterectomy and menopause, some people still get pains and stuff. So I mean, like I say, everyone's journey is different, and I think that's the key, is everyone's journey is different, and it's the lack of awareness, the lack of understanding, the lack of funding that goes into understanding this disease. It's super, and to be honest, like I say, I would say I was relatively clued up. Like I say, I went to an all-girls school. You would have thought that we had predominantly female teachers, and I grew up in a family with, you know, that my mum had 4 siblings, 3 of which were sisters. So I, 3 aunts, a mum, my nan, all around me, a sister. I've got, multiple cousins that are female, and this is all new. How are we in a position where this is all new? And we're still learning things now. Like I say, I still don't claim to have any expertise on it other than my own journey. I can only talk about my journey. And I think that's a scary thing. And
Where can people get help? If they're listening to this and they're feeling like they recognise these symptoms themselves, where are they best getting help and support from?
all I would say to people is go to the NHS website, read some of the symptoms, but also go to the endometriosis. I think it's uk.org, or is it .org? But the endometriosis awareness website. I think the key is, the more we research it, the more we talk about it, the more we understand it. So the more we understand different people's journeys, I know it's just, and that's all it is. It's about raising awareness of this exists, and it exists more often than we know, and people are not diagnosed with it. And I think that's the frustration, because it's invisible. People would get it if you came out in a red rash all over once a month and said, "Oh, I'm in pain, I can't, do X, Y, and Z." People will go, "Oh, obviously, because it's visible, they can see it." Whereas this, it is an invisible illness, and it's so hard to articulate the pain. It's not straightforward, and there's so many, when you hear the way people describe their pain, and you go, "Yes," because you get it and it sounds familiar, and then someone else to describe it in a different way, and you go, "Yes," because the truth is, it is all, it's all of those things. It's just having a way to articulate it for someone who is not experiencing those pains is super hard. And again, it hinders everything. And I think the key is just support the women in your life that show any types of these symptoms, point them in the right direction. Be familiar with the symptoms yourself, if not for yourself, for your friend or your sister or your little girl when she's bigger. And I think that's the key. If we're more on it now, so people don't have to wait till they're, like I was in my early 30s before I was diagnosed with such a condition, and have GPs back me away for 10, 15 years before that, saying, "Oh, you're probably pregnant," or "Go and do a pregnancy test. Oh, it's just periods." And I think just educating ourselves, and I think it needs to become a bigger thing at school. We have social and social health education now in secondary schools, and I think we should have a conversation around these types of illnesses and issues, and be aware of the symptoms, the same as we do. I remember doing a whole piece where we had to find lumps on a fake breast, so we understood at a girls' school, so we understood how to test for breast cancer, and I thought it was the best piece of education, because because you check regularly, because you're aware of this. However, I didn't have a clue about any gynecological issues, and I think we need to take the stigma away, that it's okay to talk about gynecological problems. And the more we learn about it, the more we understand everyone's got a unique journey. I think it will cause people to ask more questions and go and seek help and ask more questions. And the more questions we can ask, hopefully, we might start getting some answers. And by the time my 3-year-old is, 15, 16, and touch wood, has none of these symptoms, but if anything comes, I'll be in a position where I can at least point her and guide her and say, actually, do you know what? It's not normal. It shouldn't be expected just because you're a woman. And I think that's it. So for me, it's ask the questions, support, and educate ourselves on this awful, awful, awful disease.
I'm with Sarah from our team, who is going to tell us her, quite frankly, harrowing story on living with endometriosis, and what it is, what it means for her, and what the huge impact it has on her life and the pain that she experiences daily. Um, okay, thanks, Sarah. I'm sure everyone listening to this is very grateful for you telling your story. It is difficult to hear the pain that you were in, and like you said, it's not a visible disease, so you're just to know that you're just kind of carrying this every day, and working every day, being a mom, and just dealing with this constant pain. It's I think you're really brave, and I just personally really wish that there's more education and awareness around it, so people like yourselves and like you say, our daughters in the future don't have to suffer in the same way. So thank you, Sarah, for telling your story. And if anyone wants to share their story or leave some comments, then you can please leave it in the comments section. Thank you.